The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, listener. You are welcome to this edition of The Big Issue. Today we'll be discussing the Northern Elders' call for state police. My name is Salas Ezugu. I am standing for your regular host, Mr. George Awa, who is unavailable absent, but will do justice to the program as the case may be. With me today on the panel is our in-house analyst, Mr. Paul Abu.
It's a pleasure to be here, sir.
And our political pundit, Mr. Chibuzo Ikwebe.
Thank you very much.
So today, like I said earlier, we're dealing with the renewed call for state police by the Northern Elders. 2 days ago, both governors from the 19 northern states and monarchs, national rulers from the zone, met in Abuja, and one of the decisions they passed was that there was a need to establish state police in order to deal with the ravaging insecurity in the country, especially in the northern region. And they said they want to support every move, especially constitutional means, to have state police. They believe that state police will help to stem the tide of the kind of pillage, being wreaked on the havoc on the region by bandits and terrorists and kidnappers and rustlers and all manner of criminals. They hinge their call on the fact that the police and other policing institutions do not have enough men on the ground to police the whole states in the region and across the country. As a follow-up to their call, yesterday again, regional leaders from across the country, especially from the north, the ACF, Arewa Consultative Forum, the Northern Elders Forum, then down south by Afenifere, and down south by Pandef, also joined in the call for state police. Incidentally, they also believe that state police will help in a great way to contain the insecurity in the country. Incidentally, again, state police is not one of the 68 items passed by the National Assembly to the State House of Assembly for concurrence and impute. And the Senate spokesperson quickly pointed out that item of state police, just like resource control, was not one of the 68 items that the states, House of Assembly are supposed to legislate on, and they pass back to the National Assembly for more legislative work and for assent. And then a Professor Yadudu, advised, in fact, mentioned that without the National Assembly's impute, that this state police issue will not come to fruition. This renewed call for state police and the intransigence of the National Assembly to have it as one of the items to be discussed by state assemblies. It's making it look as if the opposition to state police is coming from National Assembly, and then this calls by states in the north. The Senate governors earlier last year also called for state police. Regional bodies now, calling for state police. Is it not time, Paul, that the National Assembly should visit this issue of state police, and look at it? If the regions and the states are asking for state police, why is it looking so difficult for National Assembly to see this issue of state police the way they're seeing it?
Salas, it wasn't listed.
Yes.
In the areas that the National Assembly will
State Assembly.
Yes, but that is sent to State Assembly. In fact, from the onset, it was not listed. So what do you want the National Assembly to do at this time? It must go through the constitutional means And the National Assembly is where the laws are made, especially as it affects every corner of this country. So you won't blame them. They are always speaking from the standpoint of the law. But it's gratifying to know that many stakeholders in the North, earlier on, this idea of state police has been an agenda of the South, mostly stakeholders on the South, who saw the need for state government to participate in policing. Although there's this fear because of what happened in those days, the Native Authority, where some people abuse policing. But it's obvious, even before now, a lot of investment have come from the state government. They buy vehicles, they buy gadgets. What like in Rivers, that the governor abused virtually everything for federal government institution. So it's obvious that, look, yes, the state is necessary now in view of the circumstances around the country. Yes, what the National Assembly should do is to legislate, to create a law that will guide state policy so that it will not be abused by state governors. Because these governors operate like emperors. They operate as if for 4 years, 8 years, the state is their personal property. And nobody else can have a dissenting voice. So that has been a fear. But the National Assembly can still create a law that will tighten this state policy. Okay. So it's a good thing. It's a good development because it's obvious that the federal government is overwhelmed. How many policemen do we have around the country? I recall recently a retired AIG said in Niger State, one of the local governments in Niger State, that the nearest police station from a village is almost, is it 50 kilometers? Nearest police station. That when there's an attack, it will take the police, and the local government doesn't. How many policemen do the local government have? Where do they even have the vehicle, the resources? So these are some of the challenges. State policing will help to improve security around the country because we have seen successes, especially the Amotekun. You can't doubt it. You can't argue that Amotekun has not been contributing to the security of the state in the southwest. So I think it's necessary. It's necessary at the moment. So you will not blame the National Assembly because they have to operate within the ambit of the law.
Yes, Peter and Paul, you have said it succinctly that it's necessary at this time, and then the National Assembly should not be blamed because they're operating within the ambit of the law. But, Chibuzo, you heard what Paul said now. Now, he talked about fear. Fear, about abuse. How can the National Assembly come in to diffuse this fear that the state police, if they're under the control of governors, that they will not be, amenable to abuse? Well, that has been, from what you said and other people have said, that has been the major fear, that is stopping the National Assembly from granting, legislating towards the enablement of state police. What, how can they mitigate this fear so that we can, because obviously everybody is in agreement now that state police can help to reduce the insecurity across the country. How can this fear be dealt with?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I was a bit intrigued as to the now. Why now? Why has the northern establishment come to see the need for this now? Because I think it would help to shape the context of what we are looking at and why before a very crucial election. I think these are the underpinnings that might help to give a clear idea as to what is at play. But even at that, I think it's a good thing that we're beginning to have some sense of consensus, national consensus around this very topical issue. Because this debate has been on for a very long time, a very, very long time. Unfortunately, it took a lot of lives, a lot of economic damage, a lot of, lack of a lot of eroding of our unity and states, benefits for us to come to this point, this reality. But like they say, it's better late than never. So I think it's a good thing that there's a consensus around this. Now, the fears are quite valid about what state police portends for Nigeria. The benefits are enormous, clearly, and I think Mr. Paul has made so much good postulations on what the benefits are. But like you asked, the fears, are they valid? Yes, I think they are valid. Fears, I mean, of how they stand to be abused by the executive. Are they valid? Yes, they are valid. Because if you look at what we have already, you have an excessively powerful executive system in Nigeria. They are not necessarily in themselves too powerful, but because of this stage of our political evolution, one, and a seeming, how do I put it now? A seeming failure of the judiciary and the executive, the other arms of government, the judiciary and the legislature, to really step up to the plate. It has afforded the executive so much powers. Of course, we all know that they dispense enough resources. They control the resources. They control the purse, and so it gives them, an undue advantage, if you will. But I think it is high time, because this election and that's why it is good that this thing is coming up. This debate is coming up at this time, and I pray it helps to shape the quality of the discussions leading into the next election. Because whether we have this done rightly or wrongly will depend on the quality of persons that we elect into public office, of course, public office in the coming dispensation. I don't think there will be much that can be done now on this before the elections. I doubt, because even the current National Assembly has been almost, for want of a better assessment, has been almost pliable.
Okay.
Very, very pliable. They call them rubber stamp and all of that, but they've not really stepped up to the plate with regards to leading an agenda of this sort. So I doubt that much will come out of them between now and the elections as to this very important consensus building around the creation of state police. However, so it helps that this conversation has come up. So when Nigerians go to the polls, they should also get involved in this. They should have this at the back of their minds while electing, not just executives now, lawmakers at the federal and state level. Because if you don't elect people who are bold and who are intellectually savvy to understand the dynamics of what is at play, you might still come back and have a National Assembly or a Federal Assembly that will not be able to step up to the plate of making laws that will ensure that executives don't, run away with this whole initiative. But that you look at what has been playing out with the autonomy for judiciary at the state, funding for local government. It has been on for a long time.
State House Assembly.
There was a time they even gave them the option of define your at the state level, define your fate with regards to funding, and they chickened out of it. So you can see the dynamics of the problems we have. So it requires a lot of sensitization, a lot of, but the citizens too have to be actively involved in this. This is an ample opportunity for the Nigerian people to reshape the psyche of our political establishment by ensuring that they engage critically on this and elect people who will do what will be the benefit of the Nigerian people. This is the time they have to do this, using this debate that is beginning to unfold around state police. Because if we get this right, it will further help. The cascading effect will be that other institutions that have been hijacked hitherto by a few people, we become a lot more liberal and free. By that I mean the judiciary, the legislature, and other institutions that have been tightly held by the executive will be free as well when they make the right kind of laws. For instance, sorry I'm taking too long. For instance, if they remove, I'm just by way of suggestion on how they can make check against hijack of the state police institutions. If they remove the way the police chief is appointed from the executive, I think it will go a long way. That debate has been on about, and we see this too in the appointment of other institutions. If they remove it from the hands of the executive as a one-man thing, I think it will go a long way in giving them some sense of independence. If they also make their budgeting quite clear that it is not going to be at the whims and caprices of the executive, it helps to liberate them from the stranglehold of the executive. There are a lot more things that can be done, but for want of time, I think these are some of the issues that can be looked at while we go into this debate.
Okay, thank you, Chibuzo. You have done a lot to this question, and yes, the fear that was expressed in the past and is still expressed now about the manipulation of state police is valid, and then the best option against it is to liberate it from control by one level. So we'll leave it at that for now. We want to go for a short break. Before we come back, we expect our listeners to make their contributions, comment on issue, to help us shape the discussion, going forward. We'll be back shortly. Thank you.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Welcome back to the big issue of today. We'll be discussing the renewed call by Northern elders, now followed by Southern regional leaders, Pandef and the Ferry for the establishment of state police to help to contain the insecurity in the country. My panelists, Paul and Judah, are giving done justice to some of the discussions. But we'll go ahead to look at some of the impediments that can militate against state police. Funding is one of the issues that could be an issue against state police right now. Like 1/3 or 2/3 of states are own salaries of staff, of teachers, of civil servants, and pensions, and so on. In the midst of all this, can states, are they viable enough to run a state police, fund it well? You mentioned earlier, Paul, that already states are committed a lot to providing of vehicles. Those ones, they do that as a voluntary gesture.
Yes.
But if you are not supposed to fund it fully as its own creation, the budgeting, the staff salary, everything will be in place. the states, do they have the capacity, financial muscle to, set up a state police? Because if a state police is not well run, it will open them up to surviving on the roadside. So can the states really afford to run a police force?
Silas, before you talk about funding at the state level, you must first of all look at certain indicators that ensure or that guarantee governance at the state level. One of the major institutions that would have helped in guaranteeing governance at the state level is the State House of Assembly. How independent are the State House of Assembly? They are not independent. In fact, most of them are just appendage of the state, of the governors. They go cap in hand begging. First and foremost, the National Assembly must ensure that, look, the states, houses of assembly are independent. They derive their funding straight from the resources of the state, not at the mercy of the governor. Not one day the governor will just go to State House of Assembly and start removing roof because he does not like a legislature ongoing. So he the State House of Assembly must not be puppet of the governors.
Okay.
If you make that one first, if you achieve that one, then funding the state police will be effective because it becomes a constitutional thing. If you don't fund it, then there's likelihood of impeachment move. It's part of incompetence of the government. If you don't achieve that, funding will be at the mercy of the governor. So, unlike the federal level where money meant for the judiciary, the legislature are released straight into their account.
First line charge.
Yes, first line charge. The heads of those institutions are in charge. Not a situation where a state is under the control of one emperor called governor. It won't work. So it will greatly impact on funding of state policy. And I can assure you that, Silas.
Okay. So the independence of the legislature,
yes,
will
must be
impact
first, yes, will impact on funding.
No, but it's not just about that. Some of the states,
some of them are viable. Some of them
yes,
are viable.
now, are we going to make it optional? Those who can fund.
No, you can't make it.
Set up
It's a constitutional matter.
I think
It's a
I
constitutional
think
matter.
first, I agree with you. Totally. And I agree too, and I think too that first, every state must come to a realization of its economic reality. I think that is very fundamental. You cannot measure Lagos and most states. There are a few states, and I think the records are there. States that can survive on their own without a federal allocation. Very few states. So I think first of all there has to be a rethinking of our economic psychology first to start with, such that every state understands, okay, this is what I am able to do. And then of course profligacy has to end. Wastages have to end. Exorbitant lifestyles have to go. All of the budget for security and all of that has to be properly scrutinized. And that is where he made a very fundamental point of the independence of the legislature, because the legislature handles the make policies on the economy and the finances
Of the state.
of states,
Yes.
just as they do at the federal level. So it starts from there. If they don't have an independent judiciary that can, legislature that can scrutinize the books, because they bring budgets to them, scrutinize the books and look out for wastages and know how to allocate, which will become difficult. That's one.
Most of them are just rubber stamp.
Exactly. Then two, you don't expect, and that is where the wage thing comes in now. This debate has been on for a long time. oh, we should have a centralized pay system for everybody when you're not generating the same as other people. You understand? That debate has been on. If this person is earning so amount from a particular state that has so revenue, this other person wants to get the same revenue as so when you're not generating as much as well. So these are fundamental things that will have to be looked into that will help to define how states will raise funds, make the necessary sacrifices so that they can scrape enough to fund security. Because and that is where the beauty of state policing comes in. You are not doing it as a job. You are doing it as a responsibility, because if you are part of that society, you are part of that place. So you are, first of all, you are not doing it as a business. You are doing it as a call to service. Because if you don't protect yourself, what is there? So if they can invoke that sense of that sense, and unfortunately, we thought that would have been able to survive at the federal level, but it has not been happening. So because of the other little peculiarities in postings and all of that, but when you know that, okay, this is my territory, this is my state, this is where I'm from, I have to do all I can to ensure that the place is secure. That will be first above what you earn. I don't know if I'm
Yes,
making the point clear enough. So I think these are the fundamental things that has to be dealt with. Then the funding can come from, you can go seek for loans, you can go seek for, but the time the place is secure, you can be sure that the economy will thrive. Investors will come in. With good policies, people will come in and invest in your place. In the north, there's arable land. If the place is secure, farmers will come. You can attract foreign investors to come make major farm, farm settlements there. So, but if the place is not secure, how do you start? And it is from those places that you get money to fund the police, because people will pay tax.
Yes.
So it's a value chain actually. But the problem has always been one, like he did point out, independence of the legislature, wastages in the system, a psyche of the executive members to just lord over everybody and do away with the public resources without being accountable. If you address these issues, I think funding of the police might not be easy, but will be very, very achievable.
Yeah, Chibola, thank you very much. I think you dealt with this question very well. But it's just something about the appointing authority. That's another area that can help to calm nerves over the fear of manipulation. Is there any way, that because their fear is that the governors who already behave like emperors now, without controlling the apparatus of security in their states, that they now have the police in their kitty again, that it will be difficult for their opponents to exist in the same states. Now, is there any way, we can propose to the lawmakers to think out the law when it comes to the issue of state police, such a way the governors influence in deciding who is the chief of police or the commissioner of police, so that the governor will not have what the president has now, the sole authority to appoint the IG. I remember one time when the governor director, my state governor in Enugu State then, he got intel that the place was going to be attacked, and he called the army in the state and told them ahead of that this place is going to be attacked at so time. And someone even crying that he gave them enough time to respond, but because the final order was coming from elsewhere, those people did not respond. So we now feel that if the government was in charge of security, possibly if the person is answerable to him, they will have responded. But the question I'm asking now is there any way we can make the appointment of the heads of police, in the state, in such a way that the governor will not have the complete control of who becomes state police commissioner?
Well, I think it's possible. I think there are models to borrow from.
Yes.
There are a lot of models to borrow from. We have an American and a system that is akin to what the Americans practice at the level of presidential democracy. How do they run their policing? I know they even decentralized to a point of county policing.
Yes. Even street police.
Exactly. So how is it that they do it so effectively that a mayor or a governor can't just act arbitrarily in the context of what we are discussing now? How do they do that? I agree that there's a need for a lot of political culture and culturing to change because that's where it starts from actually. That's where it starts from actually. Then when that happens, we can now begin to build on the institutions. But again, I think who gets to a point or how the emergence of the police chief in the state, like I said earlier, is critical. It's critical. I think it should be weaned off the hands of the executive solely. You can adopt the model that was presented by the Waste report, although it was for the INEC chairman, where he said it should be taken off the hands of the president and a judiciary or a much more robust team to sit and reflect on it, so that it doesn't become a case of one man's decision. So it helps if you can adopt same pattern for the police chief in a state, such that we are about that time where we want to do in some US states, they even go as far as doing elections. So in our case, we can sit back and say, draft a committee of people who come with high who have high reputation. Bring them from different sectors: civil society, the judiciary, the state assembly, and even from the executive. They sit down, they look at the CVs. You can do it like an executive thing. Then those that are interested will bring in their CV. They sit down, they do a panel, report. Everybody comes to defend, because they'll be asking for your academic qualification,
experience,
your character,
your
plans for the job, and all of that. They scrutinize you clearly, such that when you assume the office, you will know what is expected of you, having gone through that process. But it doesn't just end there. So you also have to have, and that is where the point he has made is very critical, a very robust and independent state assembly that will do checks and balances part-time. Because in the absence of that, then the man too can become something else. So it's but these things are not strange. What we are saying here are not things that have not been done, that are not possible, or that are not being done in some other places. These are things that are already out there. So I don't think it's like one presidential candidate will always say rocket science, that cannot be done if we are really willing and ready to do that.
All right. Thank you, Chibuzo. A final note, just a short one. You mentioned earlier that the state police is not one of the 68 items that the National Assembly sent down to the state assemblies to make input on. And Chibuzo also mentioned that it's not likely that this thing will be achieved between now and 2020 election. Yes, and then even somebody mentioned, I think NEF. They don't mention that this should be a priority for the next administration. But in the interim, what can states do in the interim before this thing can come on stream to improve the security?
Strengthen vigilante groups, strengthen volunteer groups, then also increase funding, the partnership with the police and other security apparatus in the state. That is the best way. Because we've seen successes of such collaboration in Borno State, especially the vigilante group. So they'll be of great help to the military. So that is the only way for now, until when constitutional legislation is passed and signed into law by the president. Okay. Yes.
Well, thank you, Chubulo. Thank you. I think you've done social, service to this debate, to this discussion for today. Hello, listener. From this interaction, it's established that the call by northern leaders, now followed by southern leaders and regional leaders, for state police is a desirable thing now, especially because it will improve security across Nigeria. But the fears also need to be addressed, so that this state police is not hijacked, by emperor-like governors who have this whole state force, state resources and apparatus of power in their pocket. So that as it's an ongoing process, and as things develop, we at the big issue continue to bring you up to speed. I want to thank our in-house analysts, Zapalabo and Chibuzo Ukibe, Salas Ezugu, standing for the good anchor, Mr. Jojaba. See you again tomorrow on this next topic of the big issue. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.